Okay, so I'm going to share with you some thoughts about growing an inclusive food movement. But before I start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So that's me. I wore my red shirt so you could see the resemblance, but I left my bib at home, so just sorry about that. So there's 3 things about my childhood that I really want you to know. Number 1, as you might guess, I loved food. I loved eating it, and I also loved harvesting it. I have this journal from a family vacation when I was 8. I wasn't talking about like swimming in a swimming pool or like going down a slide or anything like that. It was talking about how we harvested blueberries, and we made those blueberries into blueberry pancakes, and that we were at the ocean and we harvested mussels and we cooked them and we ate them. My sisters thought it was disgusting. Like, that's actually what I was writing about. So it's actually not surprising that I picked this career in food. Number 2, I wasn't allowed to eat sugar or junk. So on special occasions, maybe, but no soda, no peanut M&Ms, no Cocoa Puffs. So I always coveted my friends' sugary snacks, and I actually even thought their cavities were kind of cool too, which is weird. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, but my parents always made sure that we had a healthy, nutritious dinner on the table. Although I protested at the time with the way that they made us eat, I'm really grateful to my parents for the way they taught us to eat. Number 3, I was raised Catholic with a really strong sense of justice. The Catholicism that I was taught was all about fairness, equality, and helping others in need. I'm also a Libra, and people say that might be a factor too. So. And either way, I found a way to tell my parents that going to bed was completely unjust. Another thing that led me here were some health problems that I started having when I was in high school. I developed an autoimmune condition that became really debilitating. I was tired all of the time, and at the worst of it, I couldn't go to school more than 2 or 3 days a week. At one point, blow drying my hair even became an exhausting task that I couldn't do on my own. After seeing countless doctors that couldn't identify my problem, we stumbled upon a doctor of Chinese medicine. Among lots of other things, part of what she did for me was to completely change my diet. As hard as it was, at that point I would have done absolutely anything to make myself feel better. Yeah, sure. What happened in the days, weeks, and months that followed is that I watched and felt my diet begin to transform my life. Slowly, I regained my energy, my concentration, my overall health, and my joy for life. For the first time, I had to think about food in a completely different way. I had always really taken food for granted up until that point. What I started realizing was that food has the power to heal, or food, or what passes for food, has the power to destroy us. And here's where the Catholic, or Libra, focus on fairness started showing its face. I started making connections. If I, a person who I thought ate pretty well, had always had enough food, had never experienced real poverty, could be so impacted by my diet, how can we even begin to solve other problems without addressing the food that we're eating? And that is where my passion for food justice was born. Next slide. When I started working at Just Food, it was 2005. I was in AmeriCorps Vista with La Familia Verde and Karen Washington, who's speaking later, and also with Bissell Gardens. Both are community garden projects in the Bronx. So the 2 photos on the right are both Bissell Gardens, and the 2 on the left are La Familia Verde. Let's see, where am I? They started, both of these communities started farmers markets in response to the absence of other good locally sourced produce. I was so excited to get started. I wanted to do everything all at once. I remember asking Karen over and over again, what else can I do? My mentor and boss at the time, Kathleen McTighe, sat me down one day to remind me that an important part of my job is just getting to know people, building relationships that are based on trust so that we could actually work together. As a result of that advice, and the following year, my year with La Familia Verde and with Bissell Gardens ended with some lifelong friendships and began my love affair with community gardeners. One of the things I love about community gardeners is that they are not all talk. They like to get their hands dirty. Not because it's hip or trendy, Often they're just sick and tired of seeing the garbage collect in their neighborhoods, and they want to do something about it. So anyone who is a community gardener or knows a community gardener knows that I'm glorifying the situation a little bit. Community gardeners know how to be crotchety, grumpy, and downright antisocial, just like everybody else. But what I'm getting at is the difference between talking and doing. And one thing you can't argue with is that gardeners know how to do. They know how to work hard and create beauty out of nothing. They know how to create a place where their neighbors want to spend time, where children can pick fruit from a tree or pet a chicken for the first time in their lives. They know how to make an abandoned lot into a green space, and a green space into a food source, and a food source into a summer camp. Next slide. Part of why I love working at Just Food is because we get to work with people like that. People who are actually doing something to make a difference in their neighborhoods. As part of the City Farms program, I experienced a joy of working with gardeners who are willing to get out there and teach others what they know. Not as the ultimate experts, but as someone who is willing to create a learning environment where everyone is welcome and has something to share. This is a slide of the famous Classy Parker, who is leading a canning workshop at Wyckoff Farmhouse in Brooklyn. As the City Farms program, I was part of a community where we shared our dreams of what urban farming and gardening in New York City could look like in 5 years and 10 years and beyond. Next slide. It was from that community that the idea of New York City Farm School was born. My favorite thing about Farm School NYC is that it was created out of a collective drive by many different individuals and organizations to create something positive. These are some of the early day meetings that we had, all the great ideas flying around. Here's the mission that Farm School NYC partners created together. Train New York City residents in urban agriculture in order to build self-reliant communities and inspire positive local action around food access and social, economic, and racial justice issues. This is a handout that we have that we are reading at every meeting. It talks about what our values are, and this is a list that we came up together. Among these values, they include host sites, teachers, partners, community leaders are all supported. Social justice is at the core. Racial and cultural diversity and diversity of life experience is essential. The school is financially accessible and financially sustainable. So together, Farm School NYC's planning group created a vision and helped to bring that vision to life. And then, at the end of 2010, after 3 official years of planning, we received a grant from the USDA's Beginning Farmer and Rancher program. And only 3 months later, Farm School NYC held its first class. That's our first certificate class right there, Rockstar Group. So Farm School NYC is still a new school. We're only in our 3rd year of classes. We are a work in progress, and we'll always be striving to get closer to our vision. In the meantime, we're working hard to make a difference in the movement, to make sure that as urban farming becomes more popular, people continue to learn from each other, especially from those who have been around for decades. To make sure that the movement and its leadership are diverse and that the food movement honors that diversity. Diversity exists in the local food and urban farming movement. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. There's so much richness and depth among us. The disparities exist in who gets recognition. For example, mainstream media coverage of the urban farming community gardening movement is not a balanced grassroots view on what's happening in the city. Rather, it's been on a few new projects, usually ones that have more of an entrepreneurial focus. But what we need to remember and to constantly highlight is that the value of urban farming goes far beyond the money spent. The value of urban farming is about transforming lives. Next slide. In the past 8 years that I've been at Just Food, I've noticed a really big shift in the urban farming movement, including a noticeable demographic shift. I'm going to describe 2 individuals, one of the before and one of the after, and they're both hypothetical people, but they're representing ideas. The urban farmer I was most likely to come across when I first started working at Just Food was part of a community garden, started out decades ago and wanted to make a difference in their neighborhood or create a little piece of green. This person was maybe in their 60s, probably African American, maybe Latin American, and they were most likely volunteering their time. The other person I'm going to call the new urban farmer. What I've seen and what Farm School NYC applications reassert is that the new urban farmer is most likely to be female, born in the 80s, white, newer to the movement, and probably moved to Brooklyn in the last few years. The new urban farmer is passionate, motivated to grow food in the city, has some great ideas about how to do it and how to make money doing it. So obviously I'm making generalizations, and there's plenty of people who don't fit into either of those boxes, or maybe some who fit into both. I recognize parts of myself in both of those groups. And yet, I know many of you in this room know what I'm talking about, and you've witnessed it for yourselves. I'm not making the distinction because I think one of these groups has a right to be doing the work and the other doesn't. I've come to realize that everyone is bringing something to the table, and we need that table to be as big and diverse as possible. Next. This is the 2012 certificate class. We have plenty of enemies out there, and so this has nothing to do with the slide now. Just a visual. So we have plenty of enemies. We've been completely set up. We have a food industry that relies on advertising and corn syrup rather than on nutrition and wholesome meals. We have tremendous costs of living, including housing, health insurance, and more, that's forcing us to spend less and less on food. We have an entire agribusiness structure that supports commodity crops, chemical inputs, and manufactured food products. We have a population of people who've grown further and further from their food sources. All of these things are a common enemy. On the other hand, we have this strong foundation of grassroots work happening around New York City. We have a city and country where people from so many backgrounds grow their own food, and more still who know how and wish they could. We also have an increase in interest in urban and rural farming, farmers markets, CSAs, food pantries, growing their own food. We have so much innovation to find better ways to distribute healthy food. People using creative ways to grow food in the least likely of places and making changes in their neighborhoods. That's the kind of diversity that we need. Our challenge moving forward is to make sure that we continue to recognize each other's achievements and good work, to continue building partnerships and relationships, to find out how we together can build this movement. This excitement and this diversity is our strength. It's the roots that ground us. They don't grind us, they ground us. It's our job to make sure that we support each other, make connections, grow with each other, and not against each other. Next slide. So I offer you this challenge. If you find yourself more in the camp of the new urban farmers, with all that excited energy, ready to change the world, like I was my first year in the Bronx, slow down, get to know your neighbors, find out about the history of your neighborhood. Before pursuing your own ideas, learn about what's happening already. Figure out how you can be a part of that collective effort. Practice humility and learn how to listen really well. If you find yourself more in the camp of the old school urban farmers, you've been doing this work for decades, you know what's what, you've seen everything, I offer you this challenge. From time to time, let yourself get swept up in the enthusiasm of new ideas. Help others to learn from your experiences, and be willing to let people learn from their own experiences, experiences that you can be a part of shaping. You never know, you might end up doing something brilliant together. As a good friend, Abu Talib from Taqwa Community Farm has been known to say, if you control your food system, you control your destiny. For this movement to succeed, I also believe that it needs to be led by all of us. That means making sure that the movement is inclusive, and that we're building the movement from the ground up. That we grow the movement by building relationships, which takes time. The faster things move, the more important it is for us to slow the heck down. How can we support each other when we're so busy rushing that we hardly even know each other? Like ships of food justice passing in the night. We're so busy working on our own awesome projects that we barely have time to share a meal together. And what is this all about if we don't have time to eat and enjoy each other's company? My biggest hope for the movement is that as it speeds up momentum, we all make an effort to slow it down, to take time to look around, to see who's at the table and who's missing, to talk to our elders and others who've been around longer than us and learn from them, to share our stories with each other, to use our energy to listen as much as or more than we talk, to work collaboratively instead of independently, and to make sure that community is at the center of all we do. So next slide. And then next slide. These are some ground rules that were created in our Training of Trainers farm school class. It's really like that. And so now, before Jess kicks me off the stage, I have another challenge. This time it's for all of you. Use the next 2 days of the conference to sit down next to someone you don't know, preferably someone who's really intimidating looking, doesn't look anything like you, and share your stories with them. Thanks.